In this scenario, I would be giving a individual lesson or small group sectional to marching band students over the summer to help them with technical issues in their music. And what I have is some music from last year's show that I analyzed for difficulties after we had done some reading through it and some score study. So obviously what I would have them do is make sure that they have their flutes and their music with them. I'm using a flute example here. And I would have them go into their audio settings and make sure that they have the original sound from musicians selected, as well as high fidelity music mode, so we can hear things as best as we can. I'd also have my flute with me, but right now we're taking inventory at the high school and middle school, and so I don't have a school flute with me, and I don't own a flute. But I would have it with me to show them fingerings if necessary, and anything else they might need. So what I've selected here are two passages from last year's show that the flutes needed help with. And what I would start off with is this first excerpt here. Measure 16, there was an issue fingering wise with the F flat. And so I would have them get their music out to measure 16. I would go and play measure 16 for them, discuss that issue of getting into and out of that F flat, and then show them some strategies that I have written out here to help them out, like approaching the F flat from the E flat. I would talk about that, play it for them, have them play it back slowly a few times until it got into their fingers and it was smoother. Talk about getting off of the F flat, and again, play it for them. And again, have them play it back slowly until it was a little bit smoother. Talk about going into that F flat from the beginning of the measure by playing just the first 4 notes of the measure. And again, playing it, having them play it back slowly until it got into their fingers easier, and then playing the last 4 notes of the measure. And again, having them play that back slowly until it got smoother into their fingers, always focusing on the F flat, because in this case, the F flat was the issue. Not just reading it and thinking E natural, but the fingering going from E flat to E natural and then down to D flat. And then after we had done that for a while and the students felt more comfortable, we'd put it back together and try the whole measure again. I would also make this example available as a PDF that they could print out and practice the strategies of approaching the F flat, going off of the F flat, and then adding more of the measure on to the F flat. So they would eventually get that measure as smooth as they possibly could. Once they got that a little bit cleaner and they felt more comfortable with it, we would take a look at another section that they had that was a bit of a challenge for them, which was more chromatic. And again, what we would do is look at it first. And so here we have 2 measures, measure 83 and 84 of the music, which were a challenge for them. And this is actually at a slower tempo than what it was in the show. And again, we'd listen to it and try to play it slowly. And especially for this section, as the students were playing, I'd try to watch their fingers and listen and see where their hangups were, what fingerings they were getting called on, what transitions were an issue. In this case, the way I've broken it down and suggested that students practice it is to practice each slur group followed by the note that comes after it. So we're practicing each slur group, but connecting it to the next slur group. And again, I would play this for them. And we would go through it very slowly. And if it was a small group, obviously one by one, or if it was an individual. And again, watching their fingers to see where their issues lie. We could break it down further and go just by slur groups. We could break this down and find which slur patterns or which transitions were the ones that were causing them the most trouble and practice just those patterns as well before we would add more in. And again, focusing on the most difficult passage and then expanding out. before we would try to put it back together. And again, once we had done some work with that one-on-one, maybe even looked at alternate fingerings, if there's a trill fingering or something that might help the transition easier at the tempo that we needed to, we would listen to it and put it back together. Again, this would be available for them as a PDF. They might already have it with them or something they could download, but certainly by sharing my screen, it was something they would be able to see and play and work with. And following that, what I would probably next do is ask them if they had any other issues they'd like to look at, allow them to share their screen to show me potential issues that we could look at, break down, see if we could come up with some exercises or analysis to help them out. Schedule an additional sectional or lesson if they felt like they wanted to, or if there was time to do that, if our schedules lined up. And then we'd end the lesson, and that would be it.